Into the realm of the PL-89, into the realm of the higher time, into the realm of the Messiah time. It is simple to sing the tune, match the sun up with the moon, with the sun and before the moon, as per Psalm 72. The two calendars are one, match the moon up with the sun. Yaakov and Esau, Tikkun and Tohu, and with that our work it is done. And with that our work it is done. It's fun! This is the PL-89 Quantum Gematriatic Thought Calendar, Gematriatic Quantum Thought Calendar for Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. February 24th, on this day in history, was the signing, or maybe it was the proposal, I'm not sure exactly what, of the papal bull known as Inter Gravissimas. This was the initiative to reform the Julian calendar by Pope Gregory the 13th, I want to say. Let's see, let's check. Let's look at Dr. Google, Rabbi Google, Pastor Google, Schmoogle. See here, Wikipedia rather. Gregorian calendar. And it's very important because that's what this is all about. Gregorian calendar, Gregorian calendar. Now, let's see here. Let's have a look. 1582 by Pope Gregory the 13th, Gansi. Yeah. But we have to look at the date. It wasn't put in effect, I think it was put in effect around October time. October 11th through the 23rd or something. Let's see here. The Gregorian calendar, February 24th. Oh, whoops. That's today's date. But yeah, I think it was also in 1582, it was February 24th. Let's see here. The Gregorian calendar is the calendar used in most parts of the world. It went into effect in October 1582. Yes, October. But it was initiated in, I believe it was in February. Okay. The Gregorian calendar, it was put into effect in October 1582, following the papal bull Inter Gravissimas issued by Pope Gregory the 13th, which introduced it as a modification of and replacement for the Julian calendar. The principal change was to space leap years slightly differently to make the average calendar year 365.2425 days long, rather than the Julian calendar's 3.65.25. It's only like a 1 point difference, but thus more closely approximating the 3. Okay. More closely approximating the 365.2422 day tropical or solar year that is determined by the Earth's revolution around the Sun. Okay. The rule for leap years is that every year divisible by 4 is a leap year, except for years that are divisible by 100, except in turn for years also divisible by 400. For example, 1800 and 1900 were not leap years, but 1600 and 2000 were leap years. Okay. So, so let's go here. Inter Gravissimas. Yes, Inter Gravissimas was a papal bull issued by Pope Gregory the 13th on Ayom Imbikolot Ishmael. Today, February 24th, 1582. So we are 443, I think, years. Right? Would that make sense? 444 years? Maybe 440 years. Let's see here. Anyway, we'll do the math later. The document written in Latin reformed the Julian calendar. The reform was conventionally come to be regarded as a new calendar in its own right, called the Gregorian calendar, named for Pope Gregory XIII. In the realm of Orthodox Christendom, whose liturgical cycles do not apply, the Inter Gravissimas, the Reformed calendar, is noted as the new style. The Reformed Julian calendar is used in most countries today, relatively independent of religious orientation of its populaces. The Reformed, it's in most countries. But some people are still using the Julian calendar. Anyway, that's enough about that. But more about this calendar. Hello? Yeah. More about this calendar. This calendar is a solar and lunar calendar, which means that it's a calendar that combines the Jewish calendar and the Gregorian calendar together in one. Like the song says, Yaakov and Esav, Tikkun and Tohu. If you are familiar with Chabad philosophy, or Chabad Chassidut, Kabbalah, perhaps you could say, or Chassidut really incorporates Kabbalah in it. But Tikkun and Tohu are two energies, or two concepts, two worlds of, generally translated as Tikkun is rectification, and Tohu is chaos. And you could have many people explaining this in different ways. But basically, so I just take it into my own processing unit, and I kind of cook it up a bit and come out with my own product. So this is the way I understand it, that Tikkun, and by the way, I'm always trying to put my sensors out and trying to feel out the energies of Tikkun and Tohu, where they come about, and so just generally, very very generally describes that Tikkun is the concept of rectifying something, of fixing it, of making it better, of taking it from an unimproved state to an improved state. Coarse state to a fine state, refined state. You get the idea. So that's Tikkun. Those energies imply, and they bring forth, they call for a certain protocol. They call for a certain rules of conduct, code of conduct, and also calls for a certain way of thinking. And you can find Tikkun energies prevalent in the traditional Jewish, Orthodox Jewish halachic mind frame. That a lot of the halachos, a lot of the laws, the Jewish laws that have been instituted by the rabbis, they all have that energy of tikkun in mind. That the idea of don't do this because it will come to do this, and then if you do this, perhaps you might not be careful, you might forget. Or there's all these precautions to do the right thing. And it's a way of thinking. And the world needs that. The world needs to be corrected in many ways. And you see that quite a bit throughout all of halacha. We do this a little early because in case this happens, then this will happen. Because if this would happen, then this would happen. If that would happen, then this would happen. That's tikkun. That's the general energy of tikkun. Correcting. There's a lot of, I won't call it negative thinking, but there's like a lot of worrying about what would happen if this happens and protecting against. So certainly it's not negative, it's positively trying to defend against it, but it's certainly taking into consideration the fact that something negative could happen if this precaution were not taken. And that's a lot of the prevalent thought patterning behind halacha. And then you have the rule of tohu. And at first glance, when you see tohu, you might be thinking, you don't want that. That's chaos. That's nutty. That's insanity. Chaos is lack of order. And it's not exactly that. But it can be that. It can turn into that. And chaos is like unrefined, unbridled force of energy that creates things. You could say creates things or destroys things, conversely. Its mind frame is not considering fixing anything. It's not thinking about fixing anything. Okay, it's concerned with making things happen, but more than that, creating things, innovating things, and left without being in check, this force can be extremely chaotic because it doesn't have any rules. In fact, if you give it rules, it will break the rules. It's chaos after all. But this chaos, it's not a bad thing. It's the desire to create might be one description of the chaos ethic, the chaos concept. But it's also a lack of order in a certain way. Let's compare it to some ideas. If tikkun were a nice, neat haircut, chaos would be long, huge hair just flying all over the place. If tikkun would be if tikkun would be a Toyota Camry, then chaos would be a Ferrari, or chaos would be a Hummer, or something flamboyant, extravagant, but definitely it's creating a much more visible energy, much more visible presence than the tikkun. The tikkun doesn't want to. In fact, those who are in the tikkun worlds discourage being creative. That's why it can be noticed that in many places, I won't name names, but there's many institutions that they all dress a certain way, and they're not encouraged to think original thoughts. They're encouraged to follow. And for the world of tikkun, this can be very important, very helpful, not to be so creative. It's good to just follow the rules, do what's right, and don't do what's wrong, but don't be too creative. Because when you're too creative, then the individuality comes out. When the individuality comes out, then things that would restrain that become the enemy. Conversely, you can have a brilliant artist, writer, even mathematician, physicist, sculptor, artist, but inventors, musicians, and they're driven by a force that is unbridled creative force. It's explosive. It doesn't have any restraints, limits. That's why often if you'll notice artists or musicians or who are very successful or not successful, doesn't matter. They're way outside. They're off the rails. They're kind of like way outside the. So that's chaos, and that can be very good or very bad. But those two forces are actually represented in the two brothers that were Jacob and Esau. I think you already can tell by just the description of these two forces who was who. But Jacob, of course, was the tikkun, and Esau was the tohu, was the chaos. So this calendar is called the PL-89. And the word 89 is as a numerical value, English gematria value of unity. Unity equals 89. And so this calendar seeks to unify those two forces so they'll be in balance. And according to Chabad philosophy, this is the meeting of Jacob and Esau. I'm taking this from the Torah Or that was written by the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, Rish Ner Zalman Yadi, they call him the Baal Tanya, or in Hebrew they call him the Admor HaZaken, the original, the elder Admor, the leader of the founder of Chabad. And he describes these concepts in a similar way that I described them. I'm actually taking it from his writings on Tikkun and Tohu in Parshas Vayishlach in Torah Or. His commentary on the Torah Or. It's a Kabbalistic commentary. But anyway, on the Torah. And so this calendar is based on that idea. It's all about the sun and the moon, keeping them in balance. And so this calendar, the way it's used is that in the sense that it's a gematriatic quantum plot calendar, in that it's the sun and the moon. You take the Hebrew date and the Gregorian date on this calendar, and then you take the two numbers and add them together, and that becomes a number for the day. And there's several different processes that you can subject this number to start to create data, start to create patterns, and start to create ideas and all kinds of different things for the day. So let's just say today is February 24th. So on this calendar, see, if you'll notice, there's no names of months, because the names of months don't matter, because it's all just mathematical. So you think about January, it's the first month, or you can call it January also, January, February, March. These 3 months, but in astrology it groups up the months in different ways. The primary way in astrology that I'm aware of is called cardinal months, fixed months, and mutable months. And you can read a lot about that on the web. You do cardinal, fixed, mutable. The cardinal, just briefly, I usually don't describe it, but I'll describe it now. The cardinal months are the months that are the main months, or the months that start the season. Like, for example, right now we're not in a cardinal month because we're in the middle of winter, or maybe we're coming to the end of it. But next month in March will still be like the beginning of spring, but the very end of winter. That's what we call mutable. It's changing. But April is a cardinal month, because April is the very first full month and powerful month of spring. By the time you get to May, it's already fixed. So it's called a fixed month. It's already fixed in spring for a while. You've been a month in spring. You've had all of April. In fact, at the end of March, it became spring. So that by the time we get to May, it's already fixed in that season. It's like, you can say, deep in that season. So May is a fixed month. And then June, again, like March, is really the end of spring. It's like at the end of spring, and at the end of June is already the early summer. So June would be a mutable month, because it's a month that it's changing from season to season. And then the cycle goes over. July, it becomes a cardinal because it's the first very powerful month of summer. In August, you're already fixed in the summer. And then September, you're already making way for the fall, etc. And it goes that way. So there are rules. You could see that the calendar is based on those groupings of months. So, for example, right now, there's 3 different dispensations, and those dispensations determine which set of those months that I described, whether cardinal, fixed, or mutable, starts the starting point. And then you'll know, you could say like February, March, April, or you can say April, May, June, or perhaps back in the first dispensation it would have been September, October, November. It's basically 3 months in a calendar, but the dispensation, as I call it, which I won't explain now because I've spent a lot of time explaining now just the other stuff. So I might explain at a different time, but depending on the dispensation, tells you when to start the count. So in this dispensation, in February 24th, or any 24th of any month in this dispensation, will always be in a box that is printed 4 on it. So the 24th day is 4. So therefore, today's solar number is 4. Today's Adar 7, the 7th day of Adar, and the same thing. Any Adar is a mutable month because it parallels to March. And Adar, any mutable month in this dispensation, will always, and the seventh day will always be in a box printed 34 on. Okay, so that means that the lunar is 34 and the solar is 4, and the process is to add them together. So the PL-89 number for today is 38. Great, 38 is great. What do you do with it now? Well, there's many different methods that you can apply to it. You can just start doing gematria with 38, find out whatever 38 equals. That's one way. I was doing that for a while, and then there's ways that you can apply what I call the plus 40 rule. You add 40, so 38 becomes 78, becomes 118, becomes 158. I was doing that for a while too. But lately, there's another process that it's an alphanumeric process where so 38 can become a number by applying the standard English or English ordinal, some people call it simple English, or regular English gematria cipher, which A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, D equals 4, E equals 5, etc., until Z, which equals 26. There's 26 letters in the English alphabet. You go ordinally, okay? So if you apply the English ordinal gematria cipher to the number 38, you will come with a result of 149. Great. What do you do with 149? You turn it back into a word. ONEHUNDRED FORTYNINE. Great. You turn that into a number. That becomes a number. Becomes a word. Becomes a number. Becomes a word. Becomes a number. And there will be a point where it crosses a line where it repeats to the number that it was a few lines before it. I thought of a term called the event horizon before it enters to the black hole, which is an infinite loop. It goes back. Like, for example, 240 is one of those numbers. 240 becomes, let's say, like 255. A few more tries, it goes back to 240 again. Anyway, that's what I've been doing now. So I didn't do the whole regress I didn't do the whole process for 149. I don't know when it comes back to that repeating point. But I have done it for a few numbers, and it seems to be that if you can get to number, I think 281 spelled out will turn into 240, and 240 spelled out I think will be, not sure, like 2 something, and then about 4 or 5 tries more, maybe 6, something like that, it comes back to 240. So I think there's something to it, but I'll leave it there for now.